Good morning and welcome everyone to the British Council. I am Michelle Bishara, Head of Arts and Creative Community of the British Council in the United Arab Emirates. And we are absolutely delighted to host this event today that is organized by a great initiative. Three fascinating cultural leaders from the UAE decided on really taking serious steps to do something about the design sector in the UAE as well as in the wider region. Alternational by Sonia Kirtalani, Nick Nijad and Azza Kubaisi. They are holding this amazing series of talks which started in Beirut with the first round and now it's continuing in Dubai for round 2 and hopefully by round 3, 4, 5, 6, I don't know, things will have developed and the design sector will have definitely benefited from the interesting talks that we really hope that all of you will be putting their inputs and efforts in making them happen and really driving the sector forward for the benefit of everyone.
My name is Sarah Cowell and I'm part of the Alternational team. Alternational is a collaborative project based in the UAE, set up by 4 people, Sonia Kirtalani, Azza Kubaisi, myself, and there were others involved along the way who deserve the name check of Omar Fateh and Nick Najad, who are both part of the CLI event. And the purpose of this work is to stir up a series of debates about what the role of the creative industry is across the Gulf, about where it fits, about what it's, how important it is as a sector, but also to connect that to a number of the cultural innovators and actors in the region. We're very grateful to the support of the British Council. We are most appreciative of the work of Dubai Design District. We're very grateful to the support of An Artist Within, which is a premier series of art educational workshops conducted by Asian leading artists to nurture amateur and professional artists from the UAE, Africa and the subcontinent. And without the support of all 3 of those, we wouldn't have got this far. So thank you for your trust in us.
Well, I think what makes the UAE unique in terms of the fashion industry is that we are trying to preserve our culture and adapt fashion. So this mix of both is what makes us unique, and we are a country that is rich in culture identity, and that's what makes our creation in the fashion sector so different and creative. Because we don't have an organization to put us in place, so we struggle to find a place.
Okay.
And it's a stereotype market. For example, if I say I'm a abaya designer, I'll be stereotyped as a normal abaya designer, but my work might be way better and bigger than what I speak about. So it's a stereotype market. There's no bench market.
The thing is here in the UAE or in the GCC that we lack the infrastructure of fashion. Like we don't have the basics to build up such things. For example, we have the past, like, if we said past couple of days when we had Vogue Fashion Day, Dubai Design, that is a huge step, not only for Dubai but even for the region, because they were not only bringing all the international design here in Dubai, but also to bring out the local designers from the region, not only subjective only to Dubai or to the UAE. So this is one huge element that we're making here. If we don't have the basics elements to set, either to set a business or to set a fashion market.
I think what makes our market more unique is that it's very new. It has a cosmopolitan factor, and it's growing so fast. So it has so many opportunities in so many ways that we can define it only now.
We talk about Dubai. The ruler Sanchez Mohammed Barashid, he believed in SMEs.
Even as women, we have a very, very strong support. It's different now. Back then, it was very hard for a woman to have her own business, but now it's very easy. We have all the utilities and everybody's opening doors for us. And I think, as she said, we are a new market. And again, I'm going to say it's because we are rich in culture. So culture is always part of what we do. So that therefore, whatever we create is a bit different.
Is the fact that in a very small amount of time, this country has put itself on the fashion destination map. So when you say London, Milan, Paris, Dubai is a natural extension of that now.
We avail to many markets, whether it's within Asia or the Western sphere. And resource-wise, production-wise, we're closer to the regions that are very famous of production.
We are very much well known as an abaya industry already, although we are creative in very different aspects. We have compared, for example, to Paris, who is, like, for example, having the ready-to-wear collections, having the accessories, and having the haute couture. Haute couture doesn't go anywhere outside of Paris. It's something that's just registered in Paris, and there is no other haute couture coming out of Paris. So now, for example, in Dubai, we have the abaya, which is very strong as an industry. So how can we package that and bring it more further and more uniquely than the rest of the fashion capitals? I think everything is here, but we just need someone to put them in the right places.
And
Structure, yeah.
Yeah.
We have everything available.
But some people get and start big and that's the way, but it's actually the other way around. So it has to be a bit directed to the newcomers out there, so they know if they are going into the right direction or not.
So what you're saying is you want a series of business support structures that help you start up in business, provide the mentoring, help you set up spaces, sort out all the sort of logistical, bank accounting, production-y, etc.
Because not everyone knows the business side.
Yeah.
I think there needs to be an area as well, like a locational space that's kind of devoted to designers. I mean, you have your high street brands that are represented in malls, but what happens with regional and designers that are local? I mean, for example, in Beirut, you have an area that's devoted to your, fun, offbeat brands that you can go to, little boutiques, cute places. Here they're kind of scattered everywhere, so which kind of, it defeats exactly what it should stand for. You have less footfall into shops because of where they are. Some people don't even know about, certain boutiques which have amazing things in them that represent local designers.
But I think that's already in progress.
But because we are new, this country is new to this industry, and it's growing so fast in it, we're losing track. So we need someone who knows this industry to come here and base themselves and actually take care of all of that. Because we are growing so fast without any base. So we need that base to come in place before everything falls apart.
We have a great craftsman culture here, and you can go out and outsource your work. We've got great fabric and textile. Of course, with challenges in each one of that, but we do have that is there. People like you are designers. We have a wealth of talent like this, that we have a wealth of culture. So I think the mix is there. Now, how do we take it forward? John was the first person who worked with a small team to conceive D3. Dubai 3 was her baby, where they spent almost 3 years in research, going across council, going across sectors, and doing their research on what is needed to build a design industry here. So D3, when it's coming through 6 years of research. So they're offering the coding, they're offering the logistics, they're inviting people like us who've been working in NGO facilities without charging to actually help the design community build podiums. And then the British Council constantly gives, educational workshops through like the ones we've attended. Given all that, at the mix, we're at the crux. Now, take it from there. How do you see that we should take this forward? And you're right, that we are still nascent. Now, how do we take this forward? How do you all who work on day-to-day with challenges feel that you might be able to take it?
I think we also need some rules and regulations in the fashion industry, because we don't have that. I've known 5 designers who are really good in what they do, who gave up on what they do because there are no rules here, which actually stop their business from growing, which is copying. Yeah. And actually, people see copying as something simple, but I see it as it stops your income. It's a business killer. It's a suicide for business when someone starts. Fine, copy, but not actually. There are people who copy and claim it's their own, and then copy and tell people to buy it for a cheaper price. So all of this affects the market. And honestly, for a whole year, that dropped our revenue and income in the company for a whole year.
A proper background or education for the designers as well sometimes, and it comes into the creative aspect. Most of the designers, because they just want to be designers, they just try to copy or just to sell, And actually sometimes we don't have designers, we classify them as just sellers. They are just
That's why
sellers.
it's that stereotype, the structure.
It's not just, it's partly the business skills and partly the structures by which small businesses grow, but it's also the need for professionalisation amongst the designers, so that you know what a designer is, and the market knows what a designer is, and that will also help you respect things like governance structures, intellectual property, etc. If you knew what it was that is,
Yeah, but we can't blame it on them because when we graduated, for example, from the school, there was no fashion school.
absolutely.
So we had to have this extra effort from our end to go abroad to study or to do short courses or to come to places like British Council and to see wherever there are institutions that they can support the fashion industry.
Well, as somebody who I'm in my 6th year at the University of Sharjah, my name is Leslie George, and we've set up a fashion design and textile program. And interestingly, our numbers are very small. Now, for a place that loves fashion, loves clothes, style, loads and loads of women and men want to be involved in fashion. We have very, very small student numbers, and that's because there is this embedded belief that I don't need to study fashion because anybody can be a fashion designer. And this is a big problem in terms of us recruiting, even students that understand that. Perhaps their parents don't, and their parents think you need to go to somewhere safer, like interior or graphics or whatever. So I constantly have this conversation, not just with students, but with parents as well. Until I think for those of you who went maybe from a different background into fashion, you realise that the road was long and it was tough. And it's long and tough even if you study fashion. But at least you went out and asked the right questions, you looked for the answers to help you move forward, you were self-motivated.
One of the things that I've learned through there is that students at the Academy of Arts, first 2 years, it's mandatory that they not specialize into fashion design.
I think that it's preparing graduates for an industry is a very big challenge and maybe look for jobs or start their own business. But in terms of those that want to start their own label or something, they need a phenomenal amount of support. They certainly don't have the skill package. Even after 4 years, our first year is a general arts and design. So they have 3 years special. There's no way you could get in all the things you need to go to the business and marketing, structuring, production. You need to learn that from being in the industry, but you also need more guidance. So in terms of those who say we need more support, definitely. Sorry.
I think one of the things that we've struggled with in the UK about you're coming out of art college, whether you want to be a fine artist, a fashion designer, or anything else, the emphasis on entrepreneurship and SMEs means that a lot of people jump straight into their own brand with no knowledge of the world. And speaking of somebody...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just be right time to go in for a living. And I just like to say, I think a lot of people go ahead and do that because there is no support in stores here for people to actually go in and say, like I remember being in Fashion Forward last season and there were some speakers in from Parsons and they did not even understand the fact that all the stores here refuse to do buyouts from designers like us. It's a major problem. Nobody, okay fine, I've been around a decade, that's fine. But there's people that are starting now, they have limited budgets, they're trying to bring their dreams together, and there's no store there that says, yes, you know what, you put your money in, I'll buy it for you at cost, so that at least their pockets are not getting burned out. By the time they launch online, everybody on this market wants everything in consignment. So all I'd be doing, like today, as a designer, I only customize. I don't retail anywhere. Because my other problem that I face is, the minute I made a garment, and I put it into a store on consignment,
they're selling it at a 300% markup. One of my customers calling me up and going, oh, just weird, I can buy this for you at 1,500. Why should I go give 4,500 to XYZ store?
That's true.
It's there. It's all there.
And
you know?
I once also tried to supply to a very well-known store in the country, and they told me I'll be on a 6-month probation period where I'll be on consignment. And if it works out, if I sell out fast, I'm going to move into them buying my product. I sold my stuff within 1 month. After that, they were like, let's stay on consignment. Because the thing is, they want you, but they don't believe in you. But they still want you, you know, because they know there's a market for you, but you are a risk to them.
Yeah, and what bothers me is I've heard store owners here say things like, oh, you know, we actually keep our budgets aside for international designers. Excuse me, Chanel does not need a buyout. They're Chanel. You know, we're the people who are actually working on a tighter budget, putting our finances together and, you know, trying to get out in the market. I would quickly like to touch up on what you were saying as well about plagiarism of your design. Yes, I understand that there is no setup here to copyright a design. But at the end of the day, it's about how educated the market is with fashion as well. Your fabric is more superior than the person who's copying it. So it's not anybody's fault. Eventually it lies back to the customer that's buying it. They need to be more educated to know that, you know what, your fabric costs a certain amount, your design that went into it actually fits better, falls better, drapes better, compared to what the person who's copying it is. But what do we do with this place? It happens to me all the time. I put one design out in the market and I know that it's being multiplied. And when it comes to international fashion standards around the world, 15% change is all they need.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something. If you educate people, I've been with a lot of people in the industry because I've been there for 10 years. But even if they were educated, there are some of them that would still do
Oh,
it.
for sure.
Yeah.
Everybody
So
likes to single out.
imagine there was a rule and like let's say a rule or a punishment or something legal.
Well, you'd have to copyright the design.
Yeah,
so
legal
to go about
action.
in a formal, proper way, you'd have to start copyrighting every
Yeah,
design.
all the other countries have these rules. How come we don't have them?
Yeah,
That's what I'm
obviously,
saying.
they obviously do need like some kind of fashion board or council.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that you will always struggle with here, and repeatedly this topic keeps coming up, again, coming back to the whole consignment thing, is just the fact that where is our outlet? I'd like to know, where can I go and say, you know what, I made this fantastic collection. Now, who's actually going to put their money where their mouth is?
I think there are a number of other things in that we need to. I think there is a challenge of where people really learn the business after university, because very few people who graduate are genuinely ready to start their own brand. Where are the opportunities to go and work for somebody else to learn that stuff?
There are, but there's not.
Yeah, there's not lots of them. There's not enough of those for all of the graduates coming through the system. Whereas if you were thinking about some of the other design hubs around the world, that's what would happen for most graduates, is they'd go and work for somebody else first. And you'd be able to have a degree of choice between fast fashion and couture as to where you fit that.
Which you don't have right now.
The other thing that goes with that, though, for me, is about consistency and production quality. Now, I would play devil's advocate with your point about what the buyers are willing to commit to. And I can see why consignment happens. It's a complete pain, it's lousy for business.
I was the one who owned the business. He would see everything like from one side of, like from one point of view. He won't think of the catastrophe that he might put in himself, like bills or things like that.
I think there needs to be an area as well, like a locational space that's kind of devoted to designers. I mean, you know, you have your high street brands that are represented in malls, but what happens with regional and designers that are local? I mean, for example, in Beirut, you have an area that's devoted to your, you know, fun, offbeat brands that you can go to, little boutiques, cute places. Here, they're kind of scattered everywhere, you know, so which kind of, it defeats exactly what it should stand for. You know, you have less footfall into shops because of where they are. Some people don't even know about, you know, certain boutiques which have amazing things in them that represent local designers.
No, but I think that's already in progress. They are defining a few areas here that let's say, cluster the offbeat trendy boutiques. For example, I can say Russell Square.
Yeah.
Is one of them. Jumeirah is a big and famous area for that as well.
Because we are growing so fast without any base. So we need that base to come in place before everything falls apart. I think we also need some rules and regulations in the fashion industry because we don't have that. I've known 5 designers who are really good in what they do, who gave up on what they do because there are no rules here, which actually stop their business from growing, which is copying.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And actually, people see copying as something simple, but I see it as it stops your income. It's a business killer. It's a suicide for business when someone starts, fine, copy, but not actually. There are people who copy and claim it's their own, and then copy and tell people to buy it for a cheaper price. So all of this affects the market, and honestly, for a whole year, that dropped our revenue and income in the company for a whole year.
But
So
Sarah, you know why this happens? Because we don't have
Rules.
a proper background or education for the designers as well sometimes. And when it comes into the creative aspect. Most of the designers, because they just want to be designers, they just try to copy or
Exactly.
just to sell, you know. It's something that takes from the designers something like around 10 months to think from a concept, an idea, a print forecasting, and it's a process by itself. Till the time that it's a process by itself when it comes to the international method or process of putting the creative aspect. But some of the people, they don't understand that it's a process and there are resources and they have to go back to it. Today, if we are designers, we want as well our products to go into the media, to go into publications that are willing to use it. Anyways, we are designers and we are linked as well to the name of Dubai. So if we want to have our names, for example, in Harvard's Paris or L'Office or Paris, we have to see how the international trend forecasting for all the fashion industry, that what are the elements that we need to focus on. And because the designers don't focus on that element, then they lose the track and they try to copy just to be on the safe side.
Yeah.
You know?
So what I'm hearing is that this need for professionalisation is partly the business skills and partly the structures by which small businesses grow, but it's also the need for professionalisation amongst the designers so that you know what a designer is and the market knows what a designer is, and that would also help you respect things like governance structures, intellectual property, etc. If you knew what it was that is...
Yeah, but you know, we can't blame it on them because when we graduated, for example, from the school, there was no fashion school.
Absolutely.
So we had to have this extra effort from our end to go abroad to study or to do short courses or to come to places like British Council and to see wherever there are institutions that they can support the fashion industry. It was like nothing. People used to go to IT or business or marketing, that's it.
When they graduate, they don't necessarily have to label themselves. I mean, they don't have to be the fashion designers with a fashion house and create the label immediately. They can go through different recruitment stages and work for other fashion houses, whereas over here, immediately, whether they were self-taught designers or in the fashion school, they immediately graduate, create their own label, and that's a very big leap.
Yeah.
And even if there were some established fashion houses, they would need some sort of designers working with them. But there aren't enough designers that want to work within a fashion house. They want to jumpstart and create their own fashion label, which I think there might be somehow of a confusion that we can rectify.
And I completely agree with that, and that is a big problem facing graduates, say from my program or other fashion programs here, that the industry isn't really ready for them. And we have internship. I look for the right internship for the right student, even that's difficult. I have small numbers, so I'm certainly not saying I want to have massive student numbers because the the industry isn't ready to take them on board. I think that it's in terms of preparing graduates for an industry is a very big challenge because I sit there and I say, well, should we be looking at a couture bespoke training or should we be looking at ready to wear? Should we be looking at this kind of model or should we be looking at that kind of model? I mean, we have an international outlook but with a local focus because for a lot of our students they will go on and they will stay in the region and maybe look for jobs or start their own business. But in terms of those that want to start their own labels afterwards, they need a phenomenal amount more support. They certainly don't have the skill package. Even after 4 years, our first year is a general arts and design. So they have 3 years specialism. There's no way you can get in all the things you need when you go into the business domain, marketing, structuring and production. You need to learn that from being within an industry, but you also need more guidance. So in terms of those who are saying we need more support.
You're coming out of art college, whether you want to be a fine artist, a fashion designer, or everything else, the emphasis on entrepreneurship and SMEs means that a lot of people jump straight into their own brand with no knowledge of the world. And speaking as somebody...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just Vera. I design clothing for a living, and I'd just like to say I think a lot of people go ahead and do that because there is no support in stores here for people to actually go in and say, like I remember being in Fashion Forward last season and there were some speakers in from Parsons and they did not even understand the fact that all the stores here refuse to do buyouts from designers like us. It's a major problem. Nobody, I mean, okay fine, I've been around a decade, that's fine. But there's people that are starting out, they have limited budgets, they're trying to bring their dreams together, and there is no store there that says, yes, you know what, you put your money in, I'll buy it for you at cost, so that at least their pockets are not getting burned out by the time they've launched one line. Everybody on this market wants everything in consignment. So all I've been doing, like today as a designer, I only customize. I don't retail anywhere. Because my other problem that I face is, the minute I made a garment, and I put it into a store on consignment, they're selling it at a 300% markup, where my customer is calling me up and going, oh, Jasbir, I can buy this from you at $1,500. Why should I go give $4,500 to XYZ store?
That's true.
It's there. It's all there.
And I once also tried to supply to a very well-known store in the country, and they told me I'll be on a 6-month probation period where I'll be on consignment. And if it works out, if I sell out fast, I'm going to move into them buying my product. I sold my stuff within 1 month. After that, they were like, let's stay on consignment. Because the thing is, they want you, but they don't believe in you. But they still want you, because they know there's a market for you, but you are a risk to them.
Yeah, and what bothers me is I've heard store owners here say things like, oh, we actually keep our budgets aside for international designers. Excuse me, Chanel does not need a buyout. They're Chanel. We're the people who are actually working on a tighter budget, putting our finances together and, trying to get out in the market. I would quickly like to touch up on what you were saying as well about plagiarism of your design. Yes, I understand that there is no setup here to copyright a design. But at the end of the day, it's about how educated the market is with fashion as well. Your fabric is more superior than the person who's copying it. So it's not anybody's fault. Eventually it lies back to the customer that's buying it. They need to be more educated to know that, your fabric cost a certain amount, your design that went into it actually fits better, falls better, drapes better, compared to what the person who's copying it is. But what do we do with this place? It happens to me all the time. I put one design out in the market and I know that it's being multiplied. And when it comes to international fashion standards around the world, 15% change is all they need.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something. If you educate people, I've mingled with a lot of people in the industry because I've been there for 10 years. But even if they were educated, there are some of them that will still do it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Everybody
so
likes to save a buck.
imagine there was a rule and like let's say a rule or a punishment or something legal.
Well, you'd have to copyright the design.
Yeah,
to
legal
go about it
action.
in a formal, proper way, you'd have to start copyrighting every design.
All the other countries have these rules. How come we don't have them
Yeah,
here?
no,
That's what I'm trying to say.
We obviously do need like some kind of fashion board or council But I think one of the things that you will always struggle with here, and repeatedly this topic keeps coming up, again coming back to the whole consignment thing, is just the fact that where is our outlet? Where can I go and say, you know what, I made this fantastic collection. Now, who's actually willing to put their money where their mouth is?
I think there are a number of other things in that we need to break apart. So, a couple of things that, just to pick up on what you said. I think there is a challenge of where people really learn the business after university, because very few people who graduate are genuinely ready to start their own brand, because you don't, whether that is, you might know how to put a collection together, but you may not know production well enough, you may not know marketing well enough. So where are the opportunities to go and work for somebody else to learn that stuff? But they've also got the risk in that, and I think part of this thing about what's the markup is about understanding the retailer risk and becoming better acquainted with what works for the retailer so that you can negotiate on how much rack space you are worth and on what basis. And for me, that's part of that process of professionalisation, because we're not going, and you know, we see this issue in Beirut. Beirut designers can't get stocked in the multi-brands, and part of the reasons for that is production quality is a huge issue. You're not seeing consistency in sizing necessarily, so the comparison between what comes out of Chanel and what comes out of a local designer doesn't stack up very well at the moment, and the risk is too high, so the retailers will be compromising their own quality to their customer by taking it. And there are lots of other reasons.
Because if I walk in and I go to Galeries Lafayette and I tell them, give us a budget, you know, excuse me, you want coffee? So if there is someone speaking for us, a middle person who is relied and who is with power, that will actually make it happen. So I think the answer to all of this is just having an organization that takes care of all these things.
I think that's what they call a sales agent.
Not a sales agent.
You mean a fashion? You mean
I have to agree with her. I think it's sales agent, because I've never seen it. And correct me if I'm wrong. I've worked with councils across the world, including the British and various councils, Milan and all. They don't work on this. They worked with governance to change policy. So we already in UAE have a brilliant copyright law and the quickest implementation in the world. The council will not put money behind to fight your cases. However, if it's an industry that's fighting, they will get together, like you rightly said. To France, that's the largest, one of the largest industry is design. So it's worth their while to take governance. So they will take governance, like you rightly said, but how will they go and sell to a Galeries Lafayette? That's the only place where I differ. I don't see the council in a role of being a sales body. That's where I think you're extremely right. We might need a sales forum to go.
You're right, but remember there came a time in Dubai where the doors were opened for people to be middle people when it came to properties, and it destroyed the market big time. If you open the doors for sales middle people to do your work between you and the big companies, it will be a scattered market. It will be different prices. It will be very irregulated to the extent that it will be shut down in the end.
Actually, in the fashion industry, it's a little bit working differently. I've been to the recent Paris Fashion Week, and I've seen how they little bit do it over there. There's, for example, a showroom. You have the normal trade exhibition where the designers are standing beside their stands and everything, and they take the sales orders and everything. And then you have, for example, 3 well-known showrooms. So if I'm a retailer coming for a certain designer, I know that he's not placing in the trade shows, he's placing in the showroom. And the showroom takes care of not only the sales, takes care as well of the press. So for example, they invite Vogue and everyone to come and to visit, to check the collection, and if the designer is there, they can do interviews.
It acts as, there are a number of these, and they act as hubs. So all the small designers who can't afford to take their own space, who
exactly.
haven't got a big marketing team. And Les, you know more about this than I do, but
I want to pick up on two of those points. Firstly, a council won't solve all your problems. So I think looking for one destination to come on board and sort all the problems out, it's not going to happen anywhere. It doesn't happen anywhere. History of the BFC is one that was very checkered in terms of its solving problems for new young labels, and it was when there were incentives like the Creative Fashion Enterprise Centre that really pulled together the things that different kinds of designers needed, because not one sugar fits all. And it's a long-term project that has funding for many different parts of the creative industries, and it offers different solutions for different people. So I think that's something to look at in terms of not copying, because we're different here, it's not London, but looking at how they do things and why those things have actually come through and been successful for individual companies. The other thing is, coming back to selling, selling is key. Now, whether or not you're selling to an individual or you're going out on an international export market campaign, you need to make sure that you're with the right people supporting you, and that comes from having knowledge and understanding of how the global industry works and how that can relate to what happens here. But certainly when you look at export markets, that you're always exposed when you move to another market. So I think, I can't remember the name, when you went to Paris and what you were seeing was great, because you were observing, okay, something that maybe isn't quite, it's too soon for here, but the way that people look and manage their selling activities, and that's where a council can come in. They sit above these different agencies, components, whatever you want to call them, to maybe moderate, so you don't get a lot of fly-by-nights rushing in. I don't know if that made any sense.
Setting. One of our clients is a regional designer, and despite many, many calls to well-known boutiques in the region to be bought out, nobody answered her emails. She actually ended up being bought by the same boutiques when she exhibited in Coachray. You know, so I mean, for her, she was picked up as a UAE-based designer. She was picked up in another country by the same boutique. I mean, how do you stop things like that happening?
I don't think that will stop. In fact, I think there is nothing wrong, because it's a mentality we have in the East, that unless we go to the West and the West likes us, we're not going to like our own. So I feel that that's where I feel again the council can come in and say, look, here is our wheat, here is our chaff. Let's take the wheat overseas. Let's give them podiums across the world and make them global brands, from different perspectives. A, to help brand them. B, to help create an understanding in the designer. Look, this is the standard. You're not going to be competing against your home ground, you're competing against the world. And I feel that this kind of exposition will also help them to actually work as an industry jointly and create a brand. Yes, we do blame the showrooms, but this is the difference between a Chanel and a Me. The Me is not a brand, the Chanel is a brand. And aspiration is in new markets, in emerging consumer markets, are always for the things that they feel are brands, status symbols. So I think a very integral question we're all raised is, how do we become brands? How do we become the aspiration for our consumers? And if one of the ways that we create aspirations by going overseas, I would say, what's wrong with it?